Tears of the Kingdom is a game that I have a lot of mixed feelings about. For the first year or so that this game was out for, I was absolutely in love with the thing, and on some level, I still do love it. But the more time I've had to sit on this game, I've found just more and more things that disappoint me about it. Which is such a massive shame given the insanely long time this thing took to make for what is at the end of the day an asset reusing sequel, along with the insane amount of pre-release hype this thing had. The more I've sat on this game and thought about it, the more I've started to be not so sure that it did live up to that hype. So, given that I'm knee-deep into another playthrough of this game now and have all of this stuff fresh on my mind, I thought I'd make a video listing off some of the stuff that is disappointing me about this one. I have 10 issues prepared for this video today, and I will be telling you them now. The first thing I would change is the way the Dragon Tier memories work. One thing Tears of the Kingdom's narrative lifts from Breath of the Wild is the memory system. About 18 or so special locations scattered across Hyrule, that when interacted with will show you a cutscene depicting the events of the ancient past. This was a system that worked really well for the story Breath of the Wild was trying to tell. The memories in Breath of the Wild center around an event that took place 100 years ago called the Great Calamity, which is an event that we know basically everything we need to know about right as the game begins. The memories then serve to flesh out this tale more and show it us from the perspective of the people involved. You know how it ends, but how did we get here? Tears of the Kingdom differs from this in that it tries to link its memory mechanic to a mystery plot. Zelda fell down the hole. Where did she go? Which sounds good on paper, but the issue is that just like Breath of the Wild, the memories can be obtained in any order, which doesn't work as well for a very linear mystery plotline. The entire mysterious hook of the memory plotline can be completely ruined for you if you engage with it in the wrong way. And while yes, there is a room in the Forgotten Temple that shows you the correct order to get the memories in, because of the non-linear nature of this game, there's a good chance that many players will just never see this room at all. And on top of that, there'll be a whole bunch of other players who will just see a cool looking point of interest in the world, want to check it out, and then accidentally get half of this game's storyline spoiled for them as a result. Oh, cool, there's a thing over there. Oh yeah, what is this thing?
To become an immortal dragon is to lose oneself.
Okay, she becomes an immortal dragon and loses herself. Okay, I got it.
I'll be forever changed.
Oops. This reusing of the memory system to tell a type of story that it was never designed for is clunky, awkward, and just doesn't work. The first change I would make to this is make the memories linear. I would keep all of the geoglyphs on the map as they are, I would let you go to any of them as you want, as you please, but the memory cutscenes themselves would always be shown to the player in a linear order. The first Dragon's Tier geoglyph you find, regardless of if it's in the Gerudo Desert or up in the Elden Mountains, will always show you the first geoglyph memory. I understand that this would dumb down the whole idea of finding these specific geoglyphs that are based on the memory in them and blah 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 blah, but I would prefer to have the story flow better. Or, another change you could make to alleviate this issue would be to lock more of the memories behind the main questline. This is already the case for some of the memories in this game, such as the Master Sword's power, the Awakening, the Demon King's army, the Imprisoning War, and Zelda's Wish. These are some of the best and most hardest hitting memories in this whole game for me. And given that this game wanted to tell a more linear story of its memory system, I would not have minded if they approached more of the memories like this. I think a Master Sword in Time, Critical Decisions, and Tears of the Dragon particularly would have really benefited from this, being the 3 memory cutscenes that really showcase the big plot twist of Zelda turning into the Light Dragon. Perhaps those 3 memories could be rolled into some kind of What Happened to Zelda detective questline or something like that. These are the 2 potential routes I would be going down to fix the issues with the reused memory system from this game. And I understand that these changes could bring some loss of player freedom along with them, but I think at worst it would really be a pretty negligible loss. Being able to pick what order you view the cutscenes in is not what people jump to when they think of the freedom-oriented aspects of these games. They think about the actual gameplay design stuff itself. I feel like this is a small sacrifice that most people would be more than willing to make for a better story. Whatever the case, the memory system, exactly as it was from Breath of the Wild unchanged, did not work for the story they wanted to tell here. It was designed with Breath of the Wild story in mind, which it worked great for, and is now being used to do things narratively that it was never designed to do to very middling results. The second change I would make to Tears of the Kingdom is that Hyrule should have seen more extensive repairs between the games. In Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Kingdom was absolutely destroyed by Calamity Ganon. Hyrule is absolutely littered with dilapidated ruins from 100 years ago, and what little active civilizations are actually left have been pushed into the deep obscure corners of the country. After Calamity Ganon is defeated at the end of the game, Link and Zelda commit to rebuilding the land of Hyrule. So, jumping to the game's direct sequel, we have a dingy little wooden fort in the center of the map, a little school in Hateno Village, and that's it. There's obviously a bit more beyond that, but it's all very negligible. Now, what stuff we did get about restoring Hyrule after the Calamity is great and all. I like Lookout Landing, I like the Hateno Village School, but there really should have been more stuff like this. These are games that reused the same map and ran the risk of being very derivative of each other. Any excuse to change up the map from the previous game should have been absolutely jumped on, and more rebuilt structures and new structures was the most obvious angle they could have taken. And yet, they barely did. Here's an area that would have really benefited from this: Central Hyrule. In Breath of the Wild, this area is a barren wasteland, which on paper sounds bad, but is inhabited by the game's strongest field enemies, Guardians. So whilst there isn't really too much stuff to see here, it's a constant dangerous hotspot that has you on your toes. In Tears of the Kingdom, however, these Guardians have all been removed from Central Hyrule, leaving this place with basically nothing to do. And more structures would have been a really good way to breathe some life into it. Here's an example that really bugs me. Central Hyrule has the ruins of Lon Lon Ranch in it, one of the most iconic and beloved locations in the entire history of the Zelda series. Seeing this place completely burnt to the ground in Breath of the Wild was a very emotional detail in that game that helped sell how destroyed the world is. And rebuilding it would have doubled up on that impact, brought an iconic Zelda staple to the world era Hyrule, helped to sell the thematic ideas of rebuilding that are very prominent in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and would have given players more to do in Central Hyrule. I'm amazed that they didn't jump on this opportunity. It was staring them straight in the face. The only reason I could see for them not wanting to do anything with this location is that Lookout Landing is right next to it anyways, but that just really isn't enough of a reason for me. These two locations could have absolutely been able to coexist close to each other with their own unique uses. Lon Lon Ranch is the ruin that I'm most mad didn't get restored between the games, but I feel like just across the board, restoring some of the ruins from 100 years ago dotted around the map, or at least starting to, would have done so much to help differentiate the surface exploration experience between these two games. At least restore these pillars, Pura, you bum. The third thing I would change about Tears of the Kingdom is the insane amount of blunders relating to starting up a new playthrough. One of my biggest, most egregious problems with Breath of the Wild is the fact that this game has no file select system. A file select system has been a standard feature in Zelda games since I was swimming around in my dad's balls. And yet, in the biggest, most ambitious Zelda game to ever release, this wasn't an option. If you wanted to start a new playthrough, your only option was to completely torch your hundreds of hours worth of playtime on your last save. You also had the option of opening up a whole other new Nintendo user account to make a new save on the game, which would make it so you can't count your hours on the game, and you would have to buy another Switch Online subscription to do cloud saving, making it a worthless band-aid solution. Anyone who mentions this in the comments will be obliterated. Don't do it. But at the very least, in Breath of the Wild, if you had the DLC, you could start a new save file in the game's hard mode without torching your previous one. It was not ideal at all, a total band-aid solution, but there was at least something to mitigate this. Then, 6 years later, Tears of the Kingdom comes out, and not only does it also not have file selecting, it also doesn't even have Master Mode. No Master Mode. This game took 6 years to develop, all on the same framework as Breath of the Wild, cost $70, and is missing the previous game's difficulty options. Forget what Aonuma said about the game being content complete when it was delayed. It's not even content complete now. Oh, it's fine. Master Mode will obviously come in DLC or an update down the line. Well, guess what? Tears of the Kingdom is confirmed not to get DLC because they've done everything they can within this game's framework, even though this game literally is not complete.
Damn it. It's insane.
Tears of the Kingdom absolutely should have had a file save system and Master Mode in the game on day one. If they really wanted to do Master Mode in an update or a DLC, it would have been stupid, but at least it would have been there. But if there were no plans for DLC whatsoever, this should have just been in the base game. I'm amazed that it wasn't. And with the Switch 2 version of this game, you are at least getting a file select option. Ooh, a whole extra save file. How generous. But this Switch 2 version of the game, from everything that we know so far, still doesn't have a master mode option, which means that while this problem should absolutely be fixed, it probably never will be. My fourth complaint about Tears of the Kingdom is one that I'm definitely going to see some flack for in the comments, but screw it. Fusing monster parts to weapons is one of the few things that Tears of the Kingdom introduces that I would say absolutely is an improvement over Breath of the Wild. It further incentivizes players to hunt down high-level monsters with not just awesome weapons, but materials you can attach to those weapons to make them even more effective. When it comes to getting rupees, it gives you a choice between selling a material or saving it to fuse. Mechanically, it's just very smart stuff. So what's my problem? The vast majority of fuse weapons are absolutely disgustingly ugly. There are some cool looking fuses for sure. The silver Lionel's saber horn and the blue Lizalfo's horn always make for some pretty good looking swords. Like, not every fuse weapon you get is gonna be ugly. It's just a vast majority of the fuse weapons are really ugly. Especially the ones with higher damage output that you get closer to the end of the game. For every one cool looking Lionel horn katana you also get 7 ugly silver moblin horn weapons and 5 flaccid penis swords. Ugh. And I get it, fuse is a very in-depth mechanic with tons of possible combinations, but when so many of the combinations are this visually unappealing, it just kind of comes across as a quantity over quality kind of thing. I wish more polish and care was put into making the fuse weapons look nice. For many people, this isn't an issue. Many people saw the silly, stupid, janky looking weapons they could make and thought, this is absolutely hilarious. And for those people, I get it. I can't fault that at all. Sadly though, I just don't feel the same way. The way a lot of these things look really bugs me, and it seriously can drag down the visual presentation of this game for me sometimes. Which is a massive shame, because much like Breath of the Wild, this game is absolutely gorgeous. The fifth thing I would have changed about Tears of the Kingdom is probably the one that most people jump to when they think of why this game disappointed them.
Demon King? Secret Stone?
Secret Stone? Demon King?
Demon King. Secret Stone.
Years ago,
This all happened in a time ancient even to us.
earliest
The kingdom of
days.
Hyrule was still in its infancy.
a great evil, the Demon
great
King,
evil.
descended on
The
land.
Demon King appeared.
He sought to wipe
He
out
invaded
any
Hyrule and sought to cut the new kingdom's time short.
but
They
wrong.
reused
First king
the same cutscene
Wrong.
4 times! Out of the 5 main quest story dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom, 4 of them are paid off with the exact same cutscene, but with different races in them. The Ancient Sage calls out to the present one and brings them into this illusionary world, where they then give the present sage a massive yap sesh about how the Demon King's power was overwhelming and that none of their attacks worked. So Rauru, the first king of Hyrule, sacrificed himself to seal the Demon King, and sometime later the Sage of Time came up and told them to help the present-day sages defeat Ganon when he reawakens. And then after this exposition dump, the present-day sage goes, Demon King? Secret Stone? Does this sound engaging to you? I hope you're ready to hear it 4 times! This is all absolutely embarrassingly lazy on the part of the writing team, but beyond that, it just makes the main questline feel so boring and formulaic. It sucks so much life and energy out of these main quest activities knowing that they're all heading for an identical payoff. Many people jump straight to blaming this problem on the fact that the game is open world and that you can do these quests in any order that you want. But that is a lazy excuse at best. Breath of the Wild had an identical gameplay structure to this one, where you could go and pick whatever of the main 4 dungeons you want to do in any order. Despite that, it did not suffer from this problem at all. Each of the main 4 champion questlines had their own takeaway about the story going for them. For example, the point of the Urbosa questline is that the Calamity was this massive, large-scale tragedy. And blaming just one person or thing for it is completely pointless. No one should have to carry the blame for not being able to stop the calamity. Daruk's final on-screen moments are him seeing his grandson Yunobo and realizing the Gorons are still going strong after all this time. In death, Rivali realizes that the way he conducted himself around Link and in his life was wrong. And in the end is able to set aside his ego and place his faith in Link's ability to defeat Ganon. And with Mipha we get a sense of how many opportunities were robbed from people by the calamity. In Mipha's case, she was going to propose any day now before being horribly murdered by Ganon. Each of these 4 regional questlines gave us a greater scope of the history of Hyrule and the impact of the calamity by showing us different facets of it. Rather than writing story beats that are half as meaningful as these, Tears of the Kingdom instead opted to recycle the same boring lore dump 4 times. And that will always be so incredibly disappointing to me, because I know the creative team behind these games is capable of so much better. The 6th thing I wish I could change about this game is how awkwardly designed a lot of the UI and particularly the sage abilities are. As mentioned before, I do think Tears of the Kingdom's fusing system is all really good and encourages experimentation and incentivizes you to use your materials more and blah 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 blah, but whenever you want to fuse a material to an arrow, the game presents you with this absolutely horrendous menu to do it with. Ooh, you want to make a fire arrow, do you? Well, how about you scroll through this giant wall of every single one of your individual materials? This is just like so embarrassingly bad from a UI design perspective. The whole point of these on-the-fly horizontally scrolling bars, like the Minecraft hotbar, for example, is quick on-demand access to a limited amount of things. This type of menu in Tears of the Kingdom completely buckles under the weight of the entire player's inventory. It's not a good fit for interacting with it at all, and I do not know why they thought it was a good idea, let alone a good enough idea to reuse in Echoes of Wisdom. One band-aid solution that you can use to make engaging with this menu easier for items you use a lot is to sort by most used. That way you at least don't have to spend a whole 2 minutes scrolling to craft one fire arrow. But like the whole reason you'd want the player to have on-the-fly access to so many materials is for the sake of player experimentation. And when the only way you can make this menu a smooth experience to use is to pigeonhole yourself into the most used items in your inventory, it defeats the point of the menu in the first place and undermines the game's entire design goal of player experimentation. And just having to bring up this menu to select a material for every single individual arrow just sucks, man. It's so clunky and adds so many unnecessary steps to what should be a simple action. This sucks, man. This menu just absolutely sucks and makes the game so much more of a chore to play. The way Tears of the Kingdom handled all of this makes me really appreciate Breath of the Wild's simple arrow setup in hindsight. 5 pre-fused arrow types that you can just fire like normal arrows in a video game. I don't have to make the game grind to a screeching halt every 2 seconds to select my 500th fire fruit. I just hit the arrow type I want, fire the arrow as much as I want, and then change it when I'm ready to change the arrow type. Tears of the Kingdom could really stand to learn a lot from this setup. Perhaps a way that Nintendo could have met us in the middle here could have been to give us 5 inventory slots for us to pre-craft arrow types in. So for example, if I ever need to use like an eyeball arrow or a fire arrow on demand, I can just pull my bow out, select the arrow type once, and fire it as much as I want. Rather than having to individually craft every single fire arrow before I fire it. I can't get over how stupid this design is, man. And there's even more moment-to-moment gameplay blunders like this. In Breath of the Wild, for each of the 4 main questline dungeons you beat, you were rewarded with a champion ability. And while you could make the argument that these things felt a bit overpowered sometimes, they were absolutely worthwhile rewards for completing a whole quarter of the main quest. You were given stuff like the ability to glide upwards, protective shields that would parry attacks for you, the ability to summon a massive area of effect lightning storm, and the Zelda equivalent of a Totem of Undying. A bit overpowered? Maybe. But these are all useful player abilities that feel like worthwhile awards for the work you have to do to get them. I sure hope they didn't completely fumble this part of the gameplay in the sequel. Sage abilities. For every one of the 5 main questline dungeons you beat in Tears of the Kingdom, that dungeon's respective sage will give you an avatar that follows you around, which will have an ability that you can activate by walking up to the avatar and pressing A. These abilities give you massive gameplay advantages, such as firing a bit of water at the enemy, knocking them over for a short time, summoning a bolt of lightning by shooting an arrow. This one actually is pretty cool conceptually, but is completely obsoleted by the fact that I can make shock arrows. Oh geez, if only there was some kind of way to shock enemies using my bow and arrow. Creating a robot for you to slowly ride the back of, which is good for one segment of the game and then nothing else. And finally, a horizontal version of Revali's Gale, which admittedly is actually quite a good ability. Chulin's Gale is chill. And part of the reason why Chulin's Gale is chill is that I can actually use it without having to drop everything and run up to him. Yeah, on top of the sage abilities themselves being either extremely situational or just not that useful, they're also a massive pain in the ass to even activate in the first place, with you having to drop absolutely everything mid-fight to go and run up to one of the sages to use their useless water ability. Literally everything about these is so clunky and useless compared to Breath of the Wild's champion abilities. So when you beat one of the main quest dungeons in this game, not only does the story content you get as a reward for it completely suck, but the gameplay rewards you get also makes you feel deflated. It's the worst of both worlds. One fix I could think of to slightly alleviate the problems with the sage abilities is to keep the whole run up to them to activate the powers thing. Sure, whatever, that works for when you're just using that sage in their dungeon quest. But once you start unlocking sage avatars, the game should grant you with a second second ability wheel, a lot like the one you get for the Zonai hand abilities at the start of the game. This ability wheel will be activated with the down button on the D-pad and contain 6 options, being able to call in the 5 respective Sage abilities without walking up to them, and the whistle action that used to be activated with the down button on the D-pad. This will make it slightly harder to access whistling, yes, but like, who uses that regularly enough for a whole button anyways? Even in Breath of the Wild, you weren't really whistling that much, only doing it every now and then to call in your horse. But in Tears of the Kingdom, horses are made so completely useless by there being no ancient saddle and also there being vehicles, that you may as well just use the down D-pad button for something better. And the Sage abilities could well have been that better thing. Also, make most of them not suck, please. At the start of this video, I mentioned how my unadulterated love for this game slowly withered away as more and more of its problems became apparent to me. One of the first instances of this happening was when I explored the Crisia Pit Mine, this long stretch of cave in the depths that exists under Cape Crisia on the surface. This was a pretty sizable and well-designed segment that the whole way through had me thinking, what's gonna be at the end of this? What's gonna be at the end of this? Could it be a cool shrine perhaps? Maybe some unique armor? Well, my questions would be answered when I finally made it to the end of this segment and was rewarded with reused amiibo armor from Breath of the Wild. This game, for so many of its chest rewards, lazily reuses amiibo armor from Breath of the Wild. What could be in this big abandoned mine? Reused Wind Waker pants. What could be in this cool tree cave? Reused Fierce Deity pants. What could be the reward for the Zonai Labyrinths in this game? Maybe some really sick original new piece of armor now that the Zonai are a massive focus of the game. Reused Phantom Ganon armor. This particular case will be important later on in the video. There are so many instances in Tears of the Kingdom where there could have been some really cool and unique armor design somewhere, only to instead have a lazily reused piece of amiibo content from the first game slapped in. Now, I think a big problem with Breath of the Wild was the amount of armor and items that were locked behind amiibos. Making this content accessible to the player through the actual game without having to scan a toy into the Switch controller is a good thing. But that doesn't excuse the way that this was actually executed. I don't think having this content be accessible in the game was worth the trade-off of having most of the chest rewards be reheated leftovers. And I'm entirely serious when I say that if I had to sacrifice all of this amiibo content for actual original chest loot, I would do so in an instant. That being said though, I would rather have a game that has both original armor designs and the amiibo content from Breath of the Wild. So what I'd do to alleviate this is take all of the amiibo content out of the chests and have it instead be sold by bargainer statues. Unless I'm missing something here, this literally would just be a perfect best of both worlds solution. And I'm really upset that Nintendo didn't go with something like this. This was an extremely disappointing aspect of the game for me. Especially because what original armor designs we did get all look really cool. What could have been a no-brainer pro-consumer move on the part of the game developers here was turned into lazy, egregious asset reuse from the first game. It would be like if Majora's Mask's Anju Cafe quest rewarded you with Ocarina of Time's Bigoron sword at the end of it. My 8th complaint about Tears of the Kingdom relates to the way that Nintendo responded to a certain piece of fan feedback from Breath of the Wild. That piece of feedback being the lack of enemy variety in that game. For the massive, ambitious Zelda game that Breath of the Wild was, many players felt like there wasn't enough enemy variety in the game. Now, I will always defend Breath of the Wild on this. It's not a combat-first video game. The enemies and their AI are way more intricately designed than previous Zelda games, but I will concede that most of the time in Breath of the Wild, you are fighting the same Bokoblins, Lizalfos, Moblins, and Choo-Choos over and over again. This was something that Breath of the Wild's direct sequel absolutely could have stood to address. And they did try to. You know, if you look at the enemy count, you can see that there is a much greater variety of enemy types in this game. So then what's the issue? They fixed enemy variety. Good job, Nintendo. Well, the issue is the actual choices they made with designing these enemies. All of Tears of the Kingdom's original new enemies are good and well-designed, worthy additions to the roster. Do not get me wrong here. They are also extremely situational additions to the roster. For example, you generally only find constructs on sky islands or in small patrols around the surface. Horriblins and like-likes are only ever found on the roofs of rock formations. Small Froxes are only ever found in the depths. Gibdos are only ever found in the desert region of the game. You see what I mean? Most of Tears of the Kingdom's new enemies are designed to be encountered in very specific areas of the game. So, in the moment-to-moment average combat encounter in this game, you are still only fighting the same Bokoblins, Lizalfos, Moblins, and Choo-Choos again. Because all of the new enemies have screwed off to the Sky Islands and the caves and stuff. To be fair, joining your average monster troop on the surface are Arakudas and Boss Bokoblins. But that's like 2 new enemy types, man, and one of them is just another Bokoblin variant. It's nice, I appreciate their presence, but I kind of wanted a little more. They had the right intentions here, but I wish they went about executing on this a little differently. My 9th complaint about this game relates to one of my biggest disappointments about Breath of the Wild's story. The Yiga Clan, who are built up in Breath of the Wild extremely well. They're hiding in every corner of the map, just ready to kill Link. They get that big side quest about the lives they ruin. A big part of the Gerudo questline involves infiltrating their home base and confronting Master Koga. And then after he's seemingly killed, the Yiga Clan goes completely on the offensive at Link, jumping him at completely random moments in the game. All of this is really cool, a great villain faction. Then the game ends. What really disappointed me about the Yiga Clan in Breath of the Wild is how much of a loose end they were. Zelda and Link just don't seem to be bothered that the evil Sheikah death cult are running around killing more people and ruining more lives. It's something about the ending of the game that always bugged me a bit. So, Tears of the Kingdom rolls around. Obvious opportunity to expand on the Yiga Clan and give them an actual conclusion. You know, given that Tears of the Kingdom is meant to be this big send-off game for the Wild era, this is the end of that story. We were able to implement all of the elements that we wanted to achieve in this world and story. So, we land in the depths, but Master Koga fell there too.
Yes! Yes! Come to pop!
In the time gap between the 2 games, Master Koga has amassed a giant army of Yiga warriors and assembled a massive legion of Zonai vehicles and weaponry. This is all sounding great, so I assume we're going to be dismantling the Yiga Clan in this game, right? Right? Well, no, at the end of this plotline, Master Koga dies in a comical way, exactly like how he did in Breath of the Wild, you know, except the opposite direction this time. And then that's it. All of that for us to end up in the exact same status quo as the end of Breath of the Wild. With Master Koga seemingly gone, with that meaning even less now given that he walked off his first death, and the Yiga Clan still running around as a massive loose end. This whole faction just feels like such a wasted opportunity to me. They are so cool on paper, and Breath of the Wild for a good chunk of that game used them really well. So to see them get no conclusion in that game was disappointing enough, but to see Nintendo get a second chance to right this problem on a golden platter, and then make all of the same storytelling mistakes, just how, man? How? Near the end of the Koga questline, the Yiga Clan are painted out to be these obsessive cultists for a Demon King who doesn't even know they exist. Which, while funny, I believe to be a giant misstep. It would have been so sick to see Ganondorf and the Yiga Clan team up. Koga even could have been a right-hand man to Ganondorf or something. I feel like there could have been a really fun character dynamic to come out of that. I don't usually like dogging on stories for wasted potential. I prefer to judge what's actually there rather than fantasize about things that aren't there. But like, man, the Yiga Clan are just such a wasted villain faction. It's so sad. My final issue of Tears of the Kingdom is one that was extremely subtle to me at first. I think in hindsight, this is something that I've been noticing since literally my first playthrough of the game, but I haven't really been able to put my finger on it exactly this whole time. I haven't had the words to describe this, but I do now. Tears of the Kingdom does not have a believable world. When I'm exploring the big map of Tears of the Kingdom, I'm never really feeling like I'm getting lost in this massive, believable, well fleshed out setting. I honestly feel like I'm exploring the reshuffled map of an officially released Breath of the Wild randomizer. Everything just feels extremely overtly gamey. I'm never looking at something in Tears of the Kingdom and wondering about its place in the overall world and story in the way I am in Breath of the Wild. In Tears of the Kingdom, I look at the Zonai shrine that appeared out of nowhere with zero explanation, littered in grey sand that's literally nowhere else in the surrounding area, and thinking, this is here because the developers plopped a shrine here. Remember the Phantom Ganon armor I mentioned earlier? This is another great example. The 3 pieces of this armor set are placed into 3 giant Zonai labyrinths dotted around the map. When I was first playing this game under the assumption that this game would have a believable setting like Breath of the Wild did, I was thinking that whatever secrets I would uncover in the labyrinths built by the Zonai tribe, in the Zelda game that's entire story centers around the Zonai tribe, would relate to the Zonai tribe in some way. You know, like the loot that you found in these labyrinths in Breath of the Wild was. Instead, what I found was armor that was a meta reference to a Zelda game that released 26 years ago that has basically no connection to this at all. I never once looked at that armor and thought, why did a Zonai have that? What connection does it have to the fight with their Ganondorf? I'm looking at that armor and I'm thinking it's there because the developers put it there. I came across the exact same identical Sky Island 3 times on 3 entirely separate corners of the world. I mean, look at this. It's literally just the same location copied and pasted into 3 different areas of the game. This doesn't inspire some sense of wonder in me. I'm not looking at these 3 entirely identical islands and wondering what the story behind them are. I'm looking at them and remembering they are video game models in a video game. And don't even get me started on all of the Sheikah tech from Breath of the Wild that whole game centered around, just completely vanishing in its entirety between the games. And there's also so many locations from Breath of the Wild, like the Typhlo Ruins and the Thundra Plateau, that have had their defining features removed in this game and replaced with absolutely nothing, making them feel like empty shells of their former selves. And I know that all of this seems extremely nitpicky, and just 1 or 2 of these issues wouldn't be the end of the world for me, but it's the fact that there's so many just constantly breaking my immersion in the setting. The illusion of believability that Breath of the Wild did such a good job at crafting is completely gone in this game. And I would consider myself to be a massive gameplay supremacist when it comes to games. This is the type of issue that usually wouldn't bother me at all. But the whole premise of these 2 games is exploring and getting lost in a giant world. And when that world isn't believable, it just does not hit the same. I do not hate Tears of the Kingdom. I know I just spent the past 30 minutes criticizing almost every single aspect of the game, calling pieces of it lazy and embarrassing, and lamenting how much better Breath of the Wild was than it. But despite that, I still do not hate this game. I'm not mad, I'm just a bit disappointed. Because I know this game could have and should have been so much more. I mean, this is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, man. I had my astronomical expectations of this game for a reason. And despite how much I do enjoy booting up this game every now and then to mess around in the open world, I don't think it succeeded at filling Breath of the Wild's shoes. It had all of the pieces to. This was made by the same development team as Breath of the Wild, but the pieces just sadly didn't come together in the best way. And that's a massive shame. This game has been receiving a bunch of retroactive criticism on the internet in the past year, ranging from people calling it a disappointing masterpiece to people outright hating the game. Both of these are great videos, by the way. You should check them out if you haven't seen them. What I really hope from this is that the developers take some of this criticism and apply it to their next project. Because whilst it's a shame that part 2 of the Wild Era didn't really pan out in the way I would have liked it to, I can at least hope that the talented people making these games are able to make the next era extra special on the back of this criticism. Zelda is a pretty dope franchise, man, and whatever these developers have cooking up next, I will definitely be giving it a look.